All right, welcome back to SouFLoTV again, everybody. It is your host with the most. So, the purpose for this particular video is, for one, to clarify what the charges are for the Jamaican who was recently sent to Eswatini. In other words, a Jamaican was deported from the United States of America and he was not sent to Jamaica. Why he was not sent to Jamaica? I am now finding out that it was listed that his country would not accept him back. I find that very hard to believe because Jamaica has even accepted people who were not born in Jamaica. Like, for instance, the story we recently covered about the man who was from Texas, who was actually born in Germany on a U.S. military base, to a Jamaican father who was a naturalized citizen of the United States of America, who served in the U.S. military for a full 17 or 18 years before he retired and had recently passed away. That man's mother is from a African nation. However, they did not deport him to an African nation when it was time to deport him after he got in trouble in the United States of America. He was actually sent to Jamaica, the land of his father, who has passed away, who was a military person, active duty for 17 to 18 years. So, for Jamaica to accept somebody like that, but not accept an actual Jamaican who was born and raised in Jamaica would be very weird to me. I don't know if there was a mix-up or a misunderstanding between the Jamaican government and the US government, or if they are using this guy for something else. Read between the lines. So, just to make clear, right? In a late night post on X that used to be Twitter, Homeland Security Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin, she said that the men that were sent to Eswatini, who are citizens of Vietnam, Cuba, Yemen, Laos, and Jamaica. It was 5 men who were sent, and those were the 5 nations from which these men came. They had arrived in Eswatini on a plane, but they did not even say when or where. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. And this video also is to educate our audience more about this third country deportation agenda. It is in full effect and you need to really understand it. So, with that said, in her post, this is the Homeland Security Assistant Secretary, Tricia McLaughlin. She listed in her post that the Jamaican was convicted of murder and he was sentenced to 25 years of confinement. He was also convicted of robbery and he was sentenced to an additional 6 years on the robbery charge. And he was convicted of possession of a weapon and he was sentenced to 6 months of confinement on that as well. So he had a 25 years plus 6 years. That'll be 31 years plus 6 months of weapon charges. So that would be 31 and a half years he would have to do in a U.S. prison. And that was his crime and his time as it was broken down by Homeland Security Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin. So, for the people out there who are putting videos out saying that this Jamaican man was the worst of the worst criminal who had raped children and had murdered multiple people, it is completely a lie. According to U.S. authorities, he committed a robbery. And in the process of committing a robbery, he used a gun. And in the process of committing a robbery and using a gun, he shot and he killed one person. So, hence the reason he was charged for robbery, and he was charged for murder, and he was charged for possession of a gun in committing the robbery and taking the life of a person. That's it. Nothing else. So wherever you hear the story out there, please shoot it down that he is some child rapist and he was going around raping children. You know, they put it out there that they send the worst of the worst off to these places where they've never been before and where they know nobody from and they are not familiar with the culture or the language. And they do that because they are the worst of the worst. And they are so bad that their own country would not take them back. We're talking about Jamaica here. We're talking about Jamaica that has a lot of murderers that have committed murder on Jamaican soil. Some have committed multiple murders. So I, again, find it super hard to believe that Jamaica would reject taking back a born Jamaican for one murder committed during a robbery overseas. It's a bad crime for sure, but Jamaica is no stranger to people who have committed one murder. We have people who have committed multiple and they're still there, right? So we really are trying to figure out what happened and why did he end up over there? Is there some secret deal going on between the Jamaican government and the US government where more Jamaicans will be sent to other African nations or other parts around the world where we have never been, we don't speak the language, and we know nothing about the culture? That's the real question that needs to be asked. As a Jamaican, if I should say get in trouble in the United States of America and or they find some reason to take away my citizenship and send me to some place, I would hope that that place would be where I actually come from. I speak the language, I know the culture, I was born there and I was partially raised there, so send me home. Don't send me to a place I have never been. The language is foreign. I know nothing about the culture, and I will stick out like a sore thumb. But it gets even more wicked than that. ICE may deport some migrants to third countries without assurance that they will not be tortured. This is a memo that was recently put out right before the Donald Trump administration started or restarted the deportation, sending people to third countries. It's not third world countries, it is third countries. The efforts we will make in this video is to get everybody to understand what is going on specifically with these third country deportation. So, the Trump administration may deport immigrants to a country where they have no connections. It is now perfectly legal. In some cases, with as little as 6 hours notice and without assurances from those destination countries that the person who they are deporting to those countries will not be persecuted or tortured, according to a new memo from a top immigration official. This was published on NBC News just recently, July 15th of 2025. You can go look it up. Listen, so with that said, could you imagine being sent to a place and they're sending you there and they said to the people, can you guarantee us that this person we're sending will not be tortured or persecuted? And they're like, yeah, we can't really guarantee that. Oh, man. I mean, that's nothing to laugh about, but I laugh because it's so cynical, crazy. The Immigration and Customs Enforcement memo, which says that the policy is effective immediately, was actually issued on July 9th of 2025 by Acting Director Todd Lyons. It provided guidelines to ICE employees on how to deport people to countries other than their own country of origin, and in what they call exigent circumstances, even if there's a risk that they will be persecuted or tortured in the country that they are sending them to. You know, not for nothing, but I'm thinking about Squash, dancehall artist Squash. I'm going to leave this one there for now, but I'm thinking dancehall artist Squash, right? He's already labeled by US authorities to be the head honcho, not a gang member, the head honcho, the guy that is at the head, that runs a transnational criminal organization. This is transnational criminal organizations under Donald Trump was labeled terrorist organizations, and those who run them or are members of them are legally under the law in the US now referred to as terrorists inside the United States of America who need to be gotten rid of. That was how they actually got the people to be deported to the Seatock prison in El Salvador, because the gangs that they claim that all these people come from were falling under the guidelines of a transnational terrorist or transnational criminal organization that is recognized as a terrorist organization. So, with that, apply that to Squash. Squash might not see Jamaica, my friend. He might very well end up in, first of all, there's a place called Alligator Alcatraz that was freshly built right there in Miami where he is at. And after a while in holding, they might move him to Alligator Alcatraz. And then after they move him to Alligator Alcatraz, they might very well move him to one of these places overseas. Third country. Lyons wrote that in all other cases where the United States has not received those assurances, ICE must comply with several procedures, including that an ICE officer will serve the immigrant with a notice of removal that lists what country the federal government intends to deport them to in a language that the immigrant understands, making you fully aware before your deportation where they intend to send you. And they will not affirmatively ask whether the person is afraid of being sent to that country. They will not affirmatively ask, and will wait at least 24 hours before removing that person from the US. But, and then there's the but, in exigent circumstances, it says, the officers may deport the person in as little as 6 hours, as long as that person is provided with reasonable means and opportunities to speak with an attorney. Here's what's happening. Once you are deported to one of these places, you're not coming back here to come tell any legal authorities that, hey, I was not allowed to speak to an attorney. Hey, I was not given due process. Hey, they did not give me 24 hours. They did not give me a notification in my language that I can understand where they're sending me to. In other words, you won't be around to even fight this if you're done wrong under this third country deportation. For a lot of people who are saying, oh, don't commit a crime and you'll be okay. When you go to people's country, make sure you walk straight and narrow. You need to be connecting all the immigration videos, the US immigration videos that we have been doing on this channel. Let me walk you back a little bit. Recently, they made it known that your green card is really not that strong. Okay? People are being stopped. They're being stripped off their green cards for all kinds of frivolous reasons. And people who have citizenship started saying, well, at least I have my citizenship. I'm good. And then they put out a notification to citizens where the president has told his Department of Justice to start prioritizing stripping citizens, naturalized citizens, meaning if you weren't born here, you should be somewhat worried because the list of the things they can use to strip you of that citizenship you have has gotten way longer. And when I say a lot of the stuff that's added to it now is frivolous, it is super frivolous, which puts all of us in a fragile state. So, if you're not up to par, and if you're still thinking you're super safe and everybody else is not, so you're good, then you, my friend, are the bird with its head in the sand. Immigrants who could be subject to the policy include those who have been given final orders of removal, but in which a judge has found that they would still be at risk of persecution or torture if they are deported from the United States, as well as those who come from countries where the U.S. lack diplomatic relations or an established ability to send deportees to those countries, such as Cuba. So in other words, in short, if your country don't want to take you back, the U.S. is not going to hold on to you anymore. You're definitely going third country. Or for whatever reasons, you end up in a third country. Now, though ICE officers are told not to ask the immigrants if they are afraid of deportation to the third country, those who do state that they are afraid, they will be referred for screening for possible protection within 24 hours, according to the memo. Could you imagine? The ICE officers have been instructed to not ask you if you are afraid of deportation to this third country that they're sending you to. So that means they don't care. They don't want to hear it, because if they hear it, they'll have to do something about it, right? And what they do about it is to have you screened within 24 hours, basically to see if there's any dangers there for you, or maybe they need to change and send you somewhere else, etc., etc. Also, if you are, say, a citizen of Jamaica, it doesn't mean that the Jamaican government does not want you back there necessarily. It could also mean that you yourself don't want to go back there because your life is in danger there. So if they're telling you, hey, you got found guilty of this crime, you are a Jamaican citizen, we're sending you back to Jamaica, and you tell them, listen, there are gangs in Jamaica who are after me. They killed my dad, they killed my brother. I was next in line. I had to run away. I came here and I filed for asylum, and you gave me asylum here. So you can't send me back there because they're probably going to kill me there. This is when they will say, okay, third country deportation. So you won't be staying in the US anyways, no matter how you slice that cake. Imagine not being able to say, I'm scared. Where you're sending me is dangerous. Or imagine them not even asking how you feel. They are literally instructed to not ask if you fear where they're sending you. Trina Realmuto, the executive director of the National Immigration Litigation Alliance, which is involved in a federal lawsuit challenging these deportation of migrants to countries that are other than their own, actually said in a statement in an interview to NBC News that this memo establishes a policy that blatantly disregards the requirements that are required by statute, regulation, and the Constitution. In other words, she's trying to say that Donald Trump's immigration authorities are breaching constitutional laws, breaking international laws and agreements. But we all know that at the end of the day, if they're not able to stop this on your behalf, if you're heading out the door, then good luck to you. Because once you hit the other side, there's no way for you to make it back. There's no way for you to fight from Eswatini or Botswana or wherever they send you. I was wrongly sent here. Let me back in. How are you going to do that? The scary part about all this is when you land in these countries, for one, they have not guaranteed the US that you are going to be safe. And the US is not required to have a guarantee from their authorities that you will not be persecuted and you will not be abused and tortured. What we have seen so far is that the people, once they land in these countries, disappear. And advocates have been reaching out to authorities in these countries asking, have you seen the guys who just got deported here from the US? Nobody is able to tell if they went left or right, where they're at, when they came in, where they're staying, nothing. So you basically vanish into thin air. She said that the memo means that there will be no process whatsoever when the government claims to have credible diplomatic assurances for immigrants who are to be deported to third countries. Those assurances are unlawful because they don't protect the deportees from prosecution, persecution, or torture at the hands of these non-state actors, and because they violate legal requirements establishing that they be individualized and that migrants have the chance to review and rebut them. Romolto also criticized the government for not publicly sharing what countries it has obtained these diplomatic assurances from, and that those countries, what did they get in exchange for this? This is another part to be concerned about. Of recently, we know that Donald Trump has had meetings with quite a few different African leaders of different nations on the continent of Africa, right? What we are hearing now is that he has been pressuring these African leaders to take some of these people that he's deporting. He wants to deport them to the continent of Africa, different countries. And for the ones who are saying, no, our country is not a dumping ground, we don't want your people, sanctions are put in place, visas are restricted, and their hands are tied. Hence the reason why recently, when he had a list of countries that were barred from traveling to the United States of America, quite a few African nations made that list. On top of that, whatever countries have said yes, they have a list. They know where to send the next plane load of people, but they're not making it known to the American public. So the rest of the policy, she said, is woefully deficient. It provides a mere between 6 and 24 hours notification before deportation to a third country, which is simply not enough time for any person to assess whether they would be persecuted or tortured in that third country. Hey, you're going to Addis Ababa, 6 hours. You don't even have time to think, especially if they don't know anything about the country or they don't have a lawyer representing them at the time when they are notified. So, in a statement to NBC on Tuesday, before the memo became public, the Department of Homeland Security said that the agency has successfully negotiated nearly a dozen safe third country agreements, which tells me that they have at least 12 countries that have agreed to be like Eswatini and take people in. They have at least 12 countries where they will be sending people to from the United States of America. If countries aren't receiving their own citizens, other countries have agreed that they would take them in. It is incredibly important to make sure that we get the worst of the worst criminal aliens out of our country, said Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin. Now, here's the thing. You end up in these countries, right? Most of these countries are like third world countries. They are themselves hurting financially. They are themselves overpopulated in some cases. A lot of their people are living in poverty in some cases. Nobody is taking you as a deportee from the United States of America to house you and feed you and clothe you and take care of you and make sure you're safe. It's just not going to happen that way. And landing in these countries, not knowing the language, you won't know where to even start. Like, how do I get a driver's license? First of all, I don't even have any money. How do I earn a living? You're going to have to learn the language. How do I move about? Where is safe and where is not safe? What are the customs and norms of the culture here? So I don't get in trouble. There are just so many things on the table for being sent to one of these countries. And according to them, they have negotiated 12 so far. This ICE memo follows a Supreme Court ruling that was put out in June that allows the U.S. President Donald Trump and his administration to deport immigrants to countries to which they have no previous connection. That is what the third country deportation agenda is about. That ruling put on hold a federal judge's order that said convicted criminals should have a meaningful opportunity to bring claims that they would be at risk of torture, persecution, or death if they were sent to countries that the administration had made deals with to receive deportation migrants. That was what was actually stopping this from happening earlier. The Supreme Court had actually ruled that, even if you're convicted of crimes, you still had a right to say, hey, I don't want to be sent to El Salvador. They're going to kill me over there. I don't know their language. It's highly gang affiliated. You're sending me to CTOC, a max security prison, blah, blah, blah. Well, they ruled against that recently. And the third country deportation agenda is now in full effect once again. The fact that thousands will suffer violence in far-flung locations is less important to the conservative majority than the remote possibility that a federal judge has exceeded his authority, Sotomayor said. It is what it is at this point. This is not something we can control. This is something we can just hope doesn't happen to us and ours. But rest assured, we will be watching this unfold while it's happening to many others. Leave your comments in the comment section below. I'll catch you on the next video. It's SouFLoTV. I'm out. Peace.